And we are live. Good lunchtime, good morning, good day to you wherever you are. Welcome back to the Crazy Gibberish Livestream. I am the handsome, happy host, Bill Sylvie, and I have the awesome and amazing Alan Hammack is joining us today. Alan, good to see you, man. How are you?
Oh, good. Hell, good to see you, Bill.
Oh, man. So, listen, y'all are just going to have to put up with this for a minute or two because I got a late jump. Alan, should we be worried about the Tide this season?
Well, that was a scary few quarters there in Florida, but so far so good. We'll say.
Yeah. All right. We'll
if anybody can straighten it out, I think we've got the right coach to do that. So
certainly, I agree with you. So that ends the college football. You can all unmute us now. There's a very thin Venn diagram of college football fan and first edition AD&D fan, and I fall right square in the middle of it.
Well, so does our local Birmingham group. The D&D games tend to be Saturday nights, but in college football season, that gets a little dicey. You know, we check the Alabama schedule and, no, that's a night game. We don't play that night. So
like when the NCAA will actually let us schedule night games in Bryant-Denny. So, I just have one request. If you can kick this up the line, if you know somebody to talk to, a night game, and they intro Alabama with the brand new red LED light band that they've got around the stadium and play Raining Blood by Slayer, I think it would frighten the living hell out of whoever we were playing. I don't think the Regents are going to go for that.
No, probably not. See, now you're restricting the Venn diagram even further, Bill.
Yes.
So.
Guys who like Slayer, guys who like D&D, guys who like Alabama Crimson Tide football. I think it's like me and maybe Hale Hentges.
Now, on the part of the diagram that is the medal-loving, game-loving, but not Alabama, Stephen Picorni of Dwarven Forge is such an avowed metalhead that all of his hosted parties are bring your earwax and deafeners because he's playing something loud there.
Yeah, I went through a phase very much where it was hey, I'm at the table, we're gonna have rock and music, but there's kind of a point for me anyway where it becomes a distraction. It's like I want to have something kind of thematic and moody on, but at the same time, I'm like, hey, just calm down, guys. This is the best part of War Pigs, okay? Just hang on for a second. I never want to get to that point of.
No, I already have enough trouble hearing the people at the far end of the table, so I will try not to have too much background theme go. If it is, it's at a low volume. Mostly, I've put some mood music on for when I play Boot Hill. That's always a lot of fun. Something from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or Magnificent Seven.
Of course, Ennio Morricone to bring Boot Hill to life.
Well, I'd like to start with the acknowledgement of the passing of a great friend to gaming, Doug Ree of North Texas RPG Con. Even if you never went to the con, if you're a fan of old school gaming, you probably owe something to him because he made it such a passion to get some of the original creators like me and Tim and others, Frank and Steve Winter and Steve Sullivan and Kevin Hendricks and Darlene and so many others to the con, treated us very special, that may have revitalized a few careers and helped them continue on coming to cons and producing new material. So even if you never went to a convention, Doug Ray likely had an impact on your gaming experience, even if you never met him. Great guy, prototypical Texan. Nothing was too good for his guests, and we're very saddened. He was a great warrior in his long fight against cancer, and he fought it much longer than they thought he was going to. So.
Yeah, well, thanks for bringing that up, Alan. I honestly, NTRPG was on my list of places to go, and I wanted to meet Doug, and it just the cards were never right to do it. And I know it may seem strange saying, I miss a man I never met, but you're 100% right. He really, from all accounts, he made a great con that was just as you say. It was about bringing the great things about gaming cons back and bringing people back to, back to basics, for lack of a better term.
Right, and restricting the number of attendees so that the attendee to special guest ratio was always relatively low, meaning, and being in one location, meaning that you absolutely were going to bump into every guest on the marquee if you wanted to, just by walking around in the main corridors. And the convention will continue. He did make plans for that, and his son and Gary Oliver and Mike Battalato, do intend to keep the con going, and we will see. We hope that it continues on and is healthy and has a long future, because that'll be a great tribute to him.
Indeed, and I mean, he's one of those people that I genuinely wish I could have gotten to know. He was very no nonsense about the con, didn't put on airs. Everybody I know who met him said he was a great guy. So, I know he will be missed by the gaming community, and I regret not getting to meet the guy.
Yep. That is true. But anyway, I did want to throw that out to those of the viewers and listeners who even if you didn't know him, you were affected by him. So it's truly one of the greats.
Right on. Sorry, so I thought someone here in the house was talking to me, but So, to move on, not to leave that in the dust or anything, but
no, we have to change. But
sure. What do you have any convention plans going forward this year? I mean, I guess I say this year, but we're kind of winding up this year. My gosh, it's almost October now.
Well, it's true, but one big one, Gamehole Con in Madison, is in mid-October, Madison, Wisconsin, and that is another one that is requiring fully vaccinated and masked, which is a challenge for DMs if you're venues are rarely nice and quiet, and they tend to be loud and echoey.
Yeah.
But so this will be my first con trying to GM with a mask on. So it'll be a challenge, but it is also one of the more fun cons. So it's one of my major highlights of the year.
Right on.
Gamehole Con, Madison, Wisconsin, mid-October. Alex Kammer, the main guy behind it, and Andrew Hitchcock put on a great con.
You got to see if you can poke around some war surplus and get yourself a German tank commander's throat mic. Just tape that on there and get you some speakers set up on the table.
That's an idea, like an auctioneer's mic or something. That's a thought. That's a thought.
There you go.
Let me just tune the mic to the frequency of the microchips that you've already all had implanted. So.
Yes, you'll hear this out of whichever side you had the injection in, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And if you're on the hotel Wi-Fi already, go ahead and disconnect yourself from it. But you mentioned Boot Hill earlier, and I can honestly, this is my Swiss cheese brain, I cannot remember if you and I have had this discussion, but I think the odds are low, but when you were at TSR, did you meet Tracy Lesh?
I don't remember meeting Tracy there.
Okay.
So I think he might have been after me.
Before, actually. He did OD&D art, but his father was a huge fan of Zane Grey novels, Louis L'Amour novels, Western movies and whatnot. And so the stories go. I got to get you guys in the same room together one day on a meeting.
Yeah.
But I'm going to spoil a little bit of this story for you and for some of my listeners who may not have heard it. Tracy is a very accomplished artist. This is his piece. That was a piece that TSR commissioned but ended up not using for color art plates for D&D. And he was tasked with some other things, but Heidi Gygax sat behind him in history class, and he said, I love history. I could blow through whatever reading or open book quiz or whatever we had in history class if there was no lecture in like 15 minutes, and then have another 40 minutes sitting in history class to draw. And Heidi was sitting right behind him, saw him drawing, met him after class and said, my dad has a little company and they use a lot of art and illustrations. Can I show him your art notebook? And he said, sure. I mean, come on, who would have said no to Heidi Gygax, right?
Right.
And so she comes back and says, yeah, my dad would really like to hire you as an artist. So he said, I go over to this house. She takes me down into the basement, and there's this guy sitting there surrounded by all these little brown boxes, and he's putting booklets into them and putting lids on them. And he says, oh yeah, I saw your notebook, and throws him in a wood grain OD&D set and says, here, read this. And so he got tasked with doing illustrations for Supplement 2 and other things, but his solo project was the original digest-sized Boot Hill. And when he told his dad, yeah, there's this kind of board game thing where you play cowboys and you have shootouts and so on, and he explained the concept of a war game and the concept of a role-playing game to his dad. His dad, who was a draftsman, said, well, if you're going to do the art, we got to make sure you do it right. And so he and his dad both did the art for the original digest-sized Boot Hill.
Okay.
For TSR. So you mentioned Boot Hill, and I didn't know if you knew Tracy, so I wanted to. I wanted to.
Well, I didn't, and I apologize for my. Once you said that, the name clicked on there, but sorry for my Swiss cheese memory of putting him before, but because there just weren't that many people before. It's a safe bet if you throw out a name that it's after me. So
yeah, how dare you not remember a name from 50 years ago?
I know.
Fired. Anyway,
but we did. As a player prior to my employment, we did fall in love with Boot Hill, and as a matter of fact, during one of the summers where we had my friend's father's RV to carry us up to Gen Con and Origins, we actually played Boot Hill on the road on one of the back tables there. So
nice.
Yeah.
That is nice, man. that's something I think, and I'm going to get my grumpy old man pants on, and you can too if you want to, or you can knock me down and say I'm just being a get off my lawn grumpy old man. But that's one of the things that we don't hear enough of. I don't want to be so bold as to say it's missing and it never happens, but we don't hear enough of when I say, tell me stories about your role-playing game experience to people my age and younger. What I mean is, tell me about things like that, playing on a table on the way to a con.
Right.
And funny stuff people did. I don't want like your 4-page novella about why your elf is heartbroken and is seeking the ruby gem of whatever. I want to know about the fun you've had role playing, because what you do at the table is your character's backstory.
Right.
You remember that time we were in G2 and we fell into the pit with the ice dragons in it, and they didn't wake up, and then Bob brought out that stupid bone ice dragon whistle, which we swore wouldn't work, and he blew it, and they woke up. That's the kind of thing that when you say backstory to me, that's what I want to hear.
Well, I'll give you one more. I mean, we were college guys. We'll try anything, and so one of the things that we tried on that RV was actually playing a war game, with counters on the RV, and we had little tacky bits of putty to hold the counters in place once we picked them up and moved them, because of the vibration of the vehicle. So, I'm not going to say it was an ideal thing, but that's hardcore gaming. So
that is hardcore gaming. And I have done theater of the mind role playing in a moving car before, not as the driver.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope the driver would just completely tune us out,
Well, and it's very easy to do Boot Hill without any table or setup, kind of thing, because you are just describing, situations to them. We had a system on our long gaming convoys, because anywhere from Alabama to Lake Geneva was 12 hours, and to about the same thing to Baltimore, which is where the first two origins were. We had decided that we actually assigned a role to the person sitting shotgun in the vehicle, and that job was to keep the driver awake and to make sure that the driver was not participating in whatever gaming was going on.
So the guy up front was the DM, the driving manager.
Right. And navigator, it was allegedly, I kept, even from I want to say I was a backseat navigator, but if I saw us crossing a major river and I said, we're not supposed to cross the Ohio River to get to Baltimore. Come on, so, somebody made a wrong turn.
We're especially not to cross it twice.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, that is great. The only traveling on the road gaming story I have is I was working up an OD&D adventure for a Lake Geneva gaming con back when the Troll Lords would do that with Gary in the early 2000s, and I brought my my OD&D books in my carry-on, and I got a guy sitting to my left, and I'm sitting there and I fold the tray out and dig in my bag and throw my copy of Eldritch Wizardry out, and I think that got a raised eyebrow from from my seatmate there. The human sacrifice on the cover.
Yes, and the somewhat naked female on the cover. Yes.
But yeah, that's the kind of gaming story that I love. That's the way. Speaking of stories, I've been dying to ask you this, and we had so much fun last time that like all of my questions on this topic, I could have kept you here until like 4:00 Eastern, bombarding you with questions. But so you edited the World of Greyhawk folio set, correct?
Yeah, the very first version of it.
Okay, but nothing on the box set, right?
The box set, I mean, a lot of the material, was contained within was based on the booklet, the gazetteer that I had done, that I had edited, but nothing directly. No.
Okay. So then brace yourself, because here come the Greyhawk questions. I've started a series here on the live stream where we're talking about Greyhawk gods and so on, and I know that the folio set, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is not a criticism of it, but it's very thin on the ground on a lot of details that the box set fleshed out, and a lot of people think the box set is thin on the ground. But when
it's all relative, compared to any campaign setting prior to it, which was none. The folio set was very extensive and seen that way by a lot of people. I, in the back of my mind, was wondering why in the world any DM, any self-respecting DM, would need to have somebody else's idea for a campaign when they should be creating their own, But that being said, as you say, compared to nothing, the folio set was very extensive. Compared to the folio set, the box set was extensive. Compared to the 365-page hardcover books that are out for campaign settings now, the box set of Greyhawk might be considered thin. But, it is all relative.
It is all relative. So at the time when you were doing the editing on the folio, was there an idea of, we'll expand from this, or was it, look, this is what you get?
Well, I started laughing. The thoughts were, please God, let's just get this out and printed, because it took a long time from concept and partial start. As has been noted with irony, my foreword is dated about a year before the actual publication date, and that was because Gary is the writer, and everything was not, completed. Everything had to wait on him to write, this section and that section. And I remember days when I literally would walk the 10 steps to his office and do you have anything on, on the barony, any more details on that? And he would go, oh yeah, and then pull out the piece of paper he was typing on and start typing on another piece of paper. In about 15 minutes, he'd call me in, here, and toss off a couple of pages to me. That's the way the World of Greyhawk got written. It was, he had a lot in his mind, but by then he already was working on a number of other projects. It was, I'm going to say prioritizing, might have been an issue for him, but on the other hand, I also know how the creative process works, and there are a lot of times you need to give yourself a break from project A because this idea for project B has bubbled up, and I really need to get this down before I forget it, and then you go back to A and work on it.
As somebody who's written a few things now, I have expressed this thusly, and writers, I felt silly saying this at first, and maybe this is something you yourself experience, but I've talked to other writers about this, and they say, yes, no, that's very correct. Don't feel silly. I say that the work is speaking to me, and sometimes certain works will speak louder than others.
Yes.
You'll sit down with a manuscript and you'll say, okay, the orcs are there, the orcs are there, and then suddenly you've got off to your right, you've got another one screaming, no, 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 work on me. Work on me. No, I here are all the ideas. You want to work on me. And so you take the Orcs Are and you set it aside because the other one is speaking much louder, and those ideas flow so much easier.
Right. For me, I have said that there are ideas and stories that come up, and basically they're going to occupy your brain until you get them on paper. And so you need to get that on paper, and then you can be free to work on something else. If something is that persistent, then, by all means, shift your gears and get that out. But, by the same hand, pity the poor editor working on project A who is waiting on you to deliver more material, so
yeah,
it's just the nature of the creative process. And that's why going into the less interesting aspects of running a gaming business are when you get large, you become more like a factory. If you have, a schedule of X many projects that have to get out this time, instead of, you don't have the luxury of saying, no, this one's only 90% done. I'm not happy with it. I want to work on it some more. Let me put it aside. You go, oh God, we've got to get that to Random House, in 2 weeks. So, we need to finish it.
Yeah. They're sitting there with a full printing press line waiting on you to decide whether or not elves have leaf-shaped ears or pointed ears.
That's right, or whether Dwarven women have beards, right? So.
Right, they don't. Anyway, and so the debate went on into the night. But they literally don't care. They're like, look, I don't care what manuscript is speaking to you. You're costing us $200,000 a day by not getting this done.
And yes, that's true. And basically any delay that you have in the front end is going to be multiplied down the line geometrically or exponentially because that's the way these processes work. The people that are making gaming products today, as a lot of it has to be assembled overseas. Or some of the components are. They are getting horrendously banged around by port fees and delays and rules and surcharges, and then shipping reroutings, and what happens when a freighter turns sideways in the Suez Canal? Well, that container ship that had been booked to carry, your bunch of stuff from the factory overseas to the United States is now in the Suez Canal backed up. And so you're going to be backed up, X number of weeks at the end. It's, getting a physical product out is a challenge nowadays. It's why a lot of the gamer manufacturers and publishers are embracing PDFs. Obviously, you can send something on demand out much easier. So
yeah, truly, and it's funny. So much stuff you mentioned getting stuff done in China, and delays, like a cargo ship gets turned sideways in the Suez Canal. The Chinese military decides to release a modified bat virus. Who knows what can happen? But so many RPG products, tabletop gaming products, geek hobby products, straight out of China. And, people don't apprehend that. One of my vices is watching auto restoration guys on YouTube. They'll walk into a field in Tennessee, and here's a Dodge Dart that's been parked for 47 years. Can we get it to run? And amazingly, more times than not, they do. And they'll drive cars that have been parked for half a century. They'll drive them home and then complete restorations. But a lot of what they do relies on being able to go to Napa and pick up a distributor cap for $12. Well, guess what? Guess where that was made? Not in the United States. So even those little guys are being impacted by this sort of thing. I mean, I thought it was weird when I was a kid to see my AD&D books with printed by Random House Canada in them. I was like, whoa, that's global.
Yeah. When I started with TSR in 1978, we had just contracted with what was then a major step up to Patch Press in Beloit, Wisconsin, and a real printer working with TSR for the first time. And one of the more interesting things to me was, as an editor, was being asked to go down to Patch to do color registration for things. For those that don't know, sheets were printed in 4 different colors of transparencies, and then you overlaid them using targeting marks to make sure that that the images blended correctly, and it's a fascinating process from a technical point of view, not so much for the end product. But so that was a huge step up. And then when you go to print it in Random House, well, that's all part of the deal, is that if you can get things done more cheaply if you go to the bigger distributor and printer, but they also will impose demands and restrictions on you. I'm not sure, people in the gaming community understand that if they say, well, why don't you just have the components assembled in the United States? Go, okay, are you willing to pay 3 to 4 times more, for your product? If you are, and perhaps you are, perhaps if you tested Kickstarters that said everything made in USA, you might get, the appropriate response to be able to do it. But most aren't willing to take that gamble. You try to have quality components and you try to achieve a reasonable price, but you also have to look at what else is out there. And if your target isn't going to match the stuff that's out there, you better have a great marketing plan or be a huge step up in quality to make that pay off.
Yeah, and part of the deadline, I think Chris Kane over in the comments on YouTube really hits the nail on the head. F it, ship it. And I think a lot of RPG designers, I think, take a lot of flack, because it's like, whoa, wait, hang on a second there, man. On this page, you've got, you're saying that the orcs are doing this, but then on this page, they're doing something completely different. I hope somebody got fired for that mistake, and you're like, look, I know the screw up was there. I literally had my boss standing over my shoulder because of that 2-week stretch. We have a printer, we have pre-press guys who want to do color correction.
Mm-hmm.
We have to ship it and get it approved. Then it has to get printed. Then it has to come back. And then we have to make sure there's no major production issues, like every page is canted 5 degrees to the right or something like that.
Right. Or they forgot to put in the dice,
or they forgot to put in the dice or whatever. But you can be fully cogent and aware, I need to fix this, but you have no choice in it.
Right.
Like, I just need 5 more minutes. I know the mistake is there. Nope, you don't have that 5 minutes. Give it.
Right, which is why there are cases of games and things being printed and including a note from the publisher saying, due to a shortage of this component, we've had to replace the high quality poker chip counters with the cardboard, chits. Sorry, you know.
One of my most favorite examples of errata ever issued in a game, and I want to say this, I like Twilight 2000 a lot. It's one of my favorite games. It's got the, you know, it's an end of the world kind of feel, but it's not kind of the gonzo of Gamma World, you know, the super science and science fantasy of Gamma World. It is very much a gritty, I want to play a military role-playing game, but not feel to it. There is famously an errata sheet in it, and I mean an A4 8.5 by 11 page top to bottom with note this should read this, make this correction, and so on. And I once asked Mark Miller about the possibility of doing, I basically said, hey, I know you guys on Far Future still sell Twilight 2000 materials on a CD-ROM, or you can buy the PDFs. What are the odds, you know, there might be a short bespoke run of the box sets? And he broke it down, and basically the answer is 0, because he started off with the premise, are you willing to invest $65,000 for a run of this many? And then he just kind of goes through the steps, and that destroyed any illusions I ever had of, well, this is so easy to do. You just find some printer and do it.
Yeah.
You know, that was years ago. I have nothing but the most highest respect for designers and editors, particularly in role-playing games, because let's face it, Alan, we're a picky bunch. And I include you in that too. You know, we're a very picky bunch.
And as an editor, that's your job definition. You know, so
yeah. So you know, it can be quite the adventure getting there. And I wonder, in retrospect, had the things that I wrote for Gary actually gotten published, going through the process of now that's one advantage that the Troll Lords have. They have their own printing facility, but going through the process and getting it back, like how much stuff I'd bruise my forehead with every, why didn't I fix that? Why didn't it get caught moments?
Well, you know, all I can say, and this is going back, you know, is at least very few of our products looked like SPI games where you would get sheets of errata that were conveniently ready for 3-hole punch, so you could insert them in the correct place in the rule set. You know, please replace case 21.4.30 paragraph D with not instead of yes. You know, oh well, that changes everything. So.
Yeah, you guys, let me to some of our younger, not even necessarily physically younger, but younger, like maybe you didn't start gaming until much later. Production or editing values, editing quality in the 1970s and early 80s wasn't what it should have been, as my mutilation of the English language just proved.
No, it's true, which is, you know, until I was hired, of course.
Until you were,
my car and I set the standards.
You and my car swung that ship around 180 degrees. I'll tell a funny editing story, and then I'm going to have to grill you about Greyhawk some more. But I heard this from, I believe Gary told me this story, but if not, it may have been Mike Carr. When they sent the first sets of AD&D to a third-party printer, they sent it with a note that said, you know, correct any spelling issues. Otherwise, you know. And of course, the AD&D set, it got slightly better as time went on, but with TSR having more irons in the fire, there was less concern about fixing one or two typos here and there. But when the set came back, there were no typos fixed. There were none. So you had funny stuff like percent in liar instead of percent in layer. And the reason was the printing company called them up and they said, we have no idea what this is. They had never seen a role-playing game. They'd never heard of hobbits or ents or balrogs or hit dice or, talking magic swords or anything. They were just like, we were afraid to change anything, so we just didn't change. We changed nothing.
Which is probably the best thing because, and of course, even if you tried to do it today with a computer, lair and liar are both words and it wouldn't detect an error. So,
yeah, exactly. And unless if you typed LAIQ instead of LAIR, well, obviously you're going to catch that almost instantly. But if you typed LIAR instead of LAIR, you're never going to see it, and Windows is not going to make any presumptions, or Mac OS or LaTeX in Linux is going to make any assumptions about what you meant to type.
That's correct. So, anyway, that's the, and you hope typos I could always live with. Even though they jumped out to my, editing English-minded brain, but, I really wanted people to try to get the rules right and to think about, cases of the rule and to be expansive where they needed. Oh boy, they needed to write more there. It's not an issue of a typo. They needed to be give an example. So anyway, that's one of the things that I tried to apply when I was working there. So
right on. So here, maybe you can confirm or deny this. I think everybody who's followed Greyhawk from the beginning has heard the story of the map was actually North America. That Gary's campaign Greyhawk map was North America, and Gary's campaign Greyhawk notes were completely different from what we got. So was Greyhawk the folio edition, which of course, begat, we can do the begats till dawn, but was the Greyhawk folio edition different from what Gary was running at his table, campaign world-wise?
The times that I played in Gary's Greyhawk were at many conventions, and he didn't, it was a single scenario, so I didn't get a chance to see, a campaign map that he was using. Okay. That being said, the map that he provided me and Dave Sutherland for the World of Greyhawk for the folio was not, a United States map traced over with new markers and things like that. It was a new creation. Okay. So whether or not shapes roughly parallel North America or not, I never saw that because I never heard the rumor at the time, so I wasn't looking for it. Okay. To fall back on my top secret New World Order training, I can neither confirm nor deny that.
I think the one thing we can pull out is Lake Superior is smack dab in the middle of the World of Greyhawk folio map. That much is obvious.
Well, it also bears a resemblance to a blown up Lake Geneva. So,
All right. I'll have to check that out, guys, in the chat and so on. And if you have any questions for Alan, please.
Sure,
let me know if we have.
And by the way, you really need to call this podcast to the best I can recall. So that is everything that I say is under that advisement. So.
Everything I say is under that advisement right after I say it.
Mm-hmm.
So I get you. Yeah. So when I have guests on, it'll be to the best I can recall. But so this is a visceral thing. I get it. Like when you work with something, is people ask me, "Ooh, how neat was it to work on Gary's stuff?" And I'm like, frankly, it was boring after about 4 days of looking at his notes. Because I had work to do, right? So I get that aspect, but this is a little fanboyish. I'm sorry, but did it just like floor you when you saw Darlene's map the first time, like that full layout?
Yes, although I had, I knew Darlene before because I actually had attended her calligraphy classes, and so I had a chance to see her artwork and had become friends with her. I knew what she was capable of. I had seen her artwork in other situations. So, that being said, when I first saw the unicorn for Dungeon Master's Guide frontispiece and the map for World of Greyhawk, I had seen Dave Sutherland laboring over the first translations of the map as we were trying to do rough sketches and things. So yeah, I got to see from colored pencils to rough sketches on the drafting table to Darlene's work, and I went, this is awesome. As of course her calligraphy is distinctive, and it was exactly what I thought a product like this needed. It made it a step up over everything that was out to that time.
Then maybe as one of the Greyhawk guys from back in the day, maybe you can answer a question for me, because I was wondering about this and I don't let me see if I can share this with you without causing something to catch fire. So if you see like wisps of smoke coming up behind me, just yell. So yesterday we started talking, we're exploring Greyhawk gods. When I don't have great guests to talk to, we're talking about Greyhawk gods. Let me see if I can share this in the, let's see, share screen. Okay. Share and see if that pops up. Uh-oh.
There we go. Yes.
Okay. So that bit of calligraphy there, that looks like Darlene's work. The calligraphy on that title, The Deities and Demigods of the World of Greyhawk by E. Gary Gygax. Do you know if she did that specifically for the magazine, if that's her work?
I will not guarantee it, but some of the lettering looks exactly like what she did. So it's either her work or somebody copying her letters. So
yeah. And that was my take on it too. Was if that's a copy, that is an extremely talented one.
Yeah, because you would have to find examples of both capital and lowercase on a number of those letters, and that would have been difficult. I'm almost willing to say, based on the O, itself, that's her. So, all
right, just an interesting piece of data, and I think you've answered the question fully with that. So the next Greyhawk question, and again, this is something that I had intended to ask you. Do you roll with whatever? You mentioned earlier, like, why are we publishing a campaign? Why aren't DMs doing it themselves? Did you buy into Greyhawk? Do you game in Greyhawk, or is your campaign world strictly your own at your own table?
My campaign world is my own, although being a very young at the time teenager DM, when I created my world, I populated it with countries and place names from stories and series that I had read. So it is liberally taken, from Andre Norton and others. Names will sound very familiar. I will play in, obviously played in campaigns in Greyhawk since, it became public. And when I wrote modules, we had to set them in the world of Greyhawk. So, in a sense, my Inverness is in my campaign world, but the published version of Inverness is in World of Greyhawk.
Or in North Central Florida, where Inverness is.
or in Scotland, where I visited.
Or Georgia, I think there's.
That's true. It's there's one down in Hoover, Alabama, so just a few miles down the road for me. They're everywhere.
And that's the nature of the tower, right?
Right.
It goes from place to place.
That's right. It could be near you soon. But I played as characters in campaigns in World of Greyhawk, but I never used it as my own setting.
Right on.
Now, since we evolved to 5e, I've always had a pantheistic world where any deity that the player wanted to worship from any mythos ever was acceptable. The strengths of the power of that deity were proportional to the number of worshipers they had in the world, which might not be many. If Cthulhu is a massive force in Lovecraftian Earth, but there's only one worshiper, in my campaign, then they're not going to be as powerful as they appeared. So, I prepare players for the fact that, they are not the all-powerful beings that they are in source material. That being said, I've had worshipers of Athena and worshipers of Gorm and worshipers of the gods of chaos and all sorts, and worshipers of the gods of Greyhawk. So
that's a very Fritz Leiberian approach. If you remember, like the street of the gods, the more popular a god would get, and the more affection they would gain, the further along the street and the grander.
That's right. You get up into the good quarters as you get to the big time religions. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I stole entirely the town of Holy Horrocks and put it in my campaign, which was famously the town that had a temple to every known god and a dozen unknown gods just in case. So.
Well, I was shaking my cane at the Forgotten Realms setting the other day on the stream because, you can find instances of Greyhawk gods popping up by mention in certain Forgotten Realms tomes. I'm like, get your own. Go away. Get your own.
Well, there
belongs to us Greyhawk fans.
There are some gods that are just too good to be ignored.
Just too good to be ignored. And
I mean, if you're going to be a good priest, let's start with Palor and then start thinking about the others, so.
Right. That speaking of gods and so on, that brings up something. And if this is not something you were part of, or you didn't have any cash it in this, that's completely fine. But as you recall, were you proximate to the development at all of the T series, or was that after your time at TSR? The Village of Hamlet, and then of course T1 to 4.
Village of Hamlet and T1 were during my time there. The original T module, but the others were not run by me. Now, if I recall correctly, at least T2 would have been when Frank was acting as Gary's assistant, and a lot of the he basically acted as editor and continuity person for most Gary stuff by that time. So it was kind of a closed editing loop at TSR, and we didn't get to work on a lot of his specific stuff after that.
Right on. That I again, if this follow-up question is just not in your wheelhouse at all, just say, Bill, I don't know. I just gave you all the information. Let's move on, and we will. But in T1, there's a pretty famous mention. Some people think it's a typo. Some people think it hints at what T2 could have or should have been. Some people think it's a deliberate allusion to other things. Lareth the Beautiful, the bad guy in Village of Hamlet, is mentioned as being a servant of Loth, who of course is the bad guy in the G series. What bit of vestigial information was that, if you recall, or do you remember going, hey, wait a second, why is Loth being mentioned, or is that just not even on your radar?
Well, I did work on Q1, and I know that Gary had intended to have plot hooks and story arcs that went through, but I'm not going to say that they were fully formed and thought out at the time that he dropped names in. Just that this is something that he intended, and whether or not it actually got picked up and fleshed out later was not subject to chance, but might or might not happen. And thus there are going to be little Easter eggs and maybe fragments of hooks that don't get explored later because he just didn't get back to it. You can only have Robert Heinlein famously covered his wall with charts of things that he, names that he mentioned and dates and things to try to keep continuity straight within his stories. There's only so much wall space that you have for hooks and references and things.
Right. There's a famous story about Bill Gibson when he wrote Count Zero, which is a very convoluted novel. It's right in the middle of the Sprawl trilogy. He wrote everything out on 5x7 note cards and laid it out on his living room floor to keep track of how the three major plot threads of Count Zero were interacting. So I can imagine when you've got something not only that is a plot, but that every single DM and player is going to be exploring in different ways, it's got to be 10 times the challenge to make sure that that all your ducks are in a row go in the same direction up the creek.
Well, and remember that Gary was also very big on the idea of, people not necessarily playing a module as written, but being free to expand it within their own worlds. And if you don't want to wait for him to, make a connection with Loth, you go right ahead and do it yourself.
Exactly. I've met DMs who they take that as the catalyst point to start the grand tour of, okay, we play Village, we play Temple, we play the Slaver series, we play the Giants, we play Descent, and then it culminates in Q1, and Loth was the locus of all of this all along. Every bad thing was because of her. And then I know others who are like, yeah, no, that's just a typo or something. I'm not bothering with that.
No, I know people that are replaying that series now, and Loth is the big bad, literally pulling the strings, of her web. Yeah, so
But yeah, I have always been curious about that, about the Loth, and massive quotes around this typo in Village of Hamlet, and I think it's less of a
It wasn't a type. It was not a typo.
It was not a typo. It was intent. Thank you. I think you just answered one of the great resounding mysteries of D&D history was Loth in T1 a typo? And there you have it, folks. And people say that my live streams are not for it. Right there, a piece of TSR lore laid bare for us. Thank you.
To the best I can recall.
To the best I can recall. Loth is not a typo. It was intended.
No. Really the only question is whether or not, the producers, Brian and Kevin would sweat in their bean counting suits because somebody revealed something that, oh no, we don't have that plan till next year or something like that. So big deal.
we'll do 2 minutes hate on the Blooms perhaps the next time you're on, but
that sounds good.
But I just had a question and it went right out of my head. What do you guys have to ask, Alan? So many. We have. I'm going to scroll back to the beginning. Hello from a great many of our viewers.
Hello, everyone.
Rich Lopez says hello. The Bards of Greyhawk.
Bard of Greyhawk.
Because those of you who didn't catch the last live stream, the gentleman sitting across from me, in the virtual sense right now, is the American Christopher Lee. All right, all this writing stuff. And he's on an album. I have their BG1 EP here, and those guys. I don't know if you've heard it, Alan. Those guys put together some theme music for me for this channel that I'm working on a B-roll of, so I can have a little warm intro rather than just this. Hang on, guys, I'll be right with you, kind of thing. They did an absolutely kind of a Zeppelin by way of White Summer, Black Mountain Side, Braun ER / Allman Brothers, sort of just a acoustic rock kind of piece that I can use. That is just my audience has heard it because I will play it at the drop of a hat. The Bards of Greyhawk guys are awesome, and you have worked with them.
They are wonderful. I have. I was trying to pull out time to both find my little bit of costuming to do a cameo, and I failed on their deadline and haven't gotten it into them yet, but at some point we'll get some pictures and maybe they'll do a second version of the music video of the Ghost Tower of Inverness and such.
I cannot wait. Well, if you're gonna LARP like that for them, the next time you're on the stream, I'm not saying you need to be in a poofy poet's shirt or like a peasant's tunic. I'm just saying that I want you to do that.
Sure.
that was the least sure I have ever heard in my life.
Yeah, if it's a day that I'm not having to get back to actual working, then perhaps. So yeah.
We'll set something up. I'll have my call your people. But, so you mentioned Q1. You mentioned you worked with Dave Sutherland on Q1. Now, I don't want to cause a controversy. I don't want to upset the apple cart. But okay, so Gary has a really glowing introduction into Q1 where basically he says, this is really awesome. I didn't have the time to do this. God bless Dave Sutherland. This is a fantastic module and you're going to love it. Years down the line, Gary said, that's not at all what I intended for the end of the GDQ series. What do you got for us there? I mean, was Gary Janus based on it? It may be. I have no doubt that when you hand any sequel project off to someone else, it's not going to be what you had intended. That is almost 100% guarantee of any writing project
whatsoever. And so I would say that he was probably perfectly honest in that. That being said, if you want it to end the way that you want, you write it yourself. Since we had limited guidance from him on that, then he did what he wanted. I helped out a little with ideas on how spells would change in different dimensions, and how the effects would be modified and things like that.
Spoiler alert, kids, don't cast Raise Dead in the Abyss.
But no, it'll be fun.
It'll be hilarious. Oh wait, no, I'm forgetting my DM hat. Yes, no, cast Raise Dead
for the DM, it'll be fun.
Please.
But this was during a time when literally I was in the same room as Dave Sutherland. My typewriter desk was in the loft where his artist tables were. So that was a very easy collaboration. And since he has passed, I feel that he won't contradict me. So
that's an easy one. Yeah, Dave Sutherland loved me.
Sure, he loved me.
Yeah, we got along like bread and butter, man. I am not a Q1 hater. I'm not one of those people that says I'll never play this module. I'll come up.
It was a lot of fun. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Q1 is and it can be a lot of fun, but like all good DMs, I think you'll agree with me on this, Ellen, if there's parts of it you don't like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just change things.
Sure. Why would you not change something? So yeah.
Exactly. And that, that kills me. And here I go again, throwing my slippers at the television. So many DMs today look back at classic D&D modules and they're like, this is supposed to be some epic fight against hill giants. This thing's 8 pages long. What can you do with this? That's not the question. You weren't supposed to bring modules home, tear the shrink wrap off at the table and say, okay, guys, get the dice out. They were frameworks that you were to build on. And if you saw something that you thought was ridiculous, you needed to change it. My big worry, my 15-person group, 14-person group, on Monday nights is a considerably higher level than it would take to run some of the classic modules. So I don't run them because they can only ever be for levels 4 to 7. Hell no. Instead of 5 orcs in that room, it's 5 hill giants now. That's what good DMing does. You take a module and you change it. And if you feel like Gary's vision was not that the players would fight Loth, but that the players would fight an Elder Elemental God, well, use Q1 and stick the Elder Elemental God in the spider thing.
Right, but I honestly wouldn't worry about what Gary's vision was, or what you think. What is your vision for it?
Yeah,
and what fits with your campaign. But I'm exactly like you. I have adapted material for way out of the character level of the characters that I'm running right now, and changed it down, or up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's kind of like saying, look, I can't listen to Physical Graffiti because I can't play guitar that good.
But the only time that I will tell you that, talking about going home and tearing a shrink wrap off a module at a table and then running it, that reminded me of having to be a DM at a tournament in the old days. There were times that
yes.
Actually not so old, even the Legends of Role Playing tournament up at GaryCon that Paul Stormberg does has a very old time feel to it. It's so old time that the first time that we got together to do it, an hour ahead of time, Paul is bringing pages in with revisions. So I mean, it is almost exactly the way it was when I first came to TSR and was asked to DM in the AD&D Open. So
the last, the first and last Gary Con that I've been to so far. Well, no, I can't say it because I was at virtual. I ran 5 games at virtual Gary Con.
Good for you.
Oh God, never again, never again. But I bumped into Paul at Gary Con in 2018, and I have never seen someone wear the description of harried in a social situation like that young man.
Yes.
I mean, he makes it work. Let me tell you something, guys, and I'm pretty sure Alan will back me up. If you get a chance, play in a game that Paul Stormberg's running. If you go to Gary Con or any con he's attending, or if he puts together a tournament, do yourself a favor and get into it. Paul, he's been on this channel many times. If you're listening, hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
His work is stellar, but man, you could practically hear Von Karajan's saber dance playing in the background to watch him work. And I probably bumped into him about 5 minutes before he took you guys piles of revisions. Because I see him at this table, and it looks like he's working on his taxes at 11:45 April 14th. You know, it's just piles of pages, and he's writing away and typing away on a laptop. That
sounds like it. But it was, you know, like I said, it did lend a very classic feel to the way that I felt at Gen Con 10 and 11, running those tournaments as a DM, last minute briefings and things. So that's a lot of fun. But yes, not only go to something. I mean, Paul orchestrates the entire Legends of Wargaming, Legends of Role Playing room, which is full of must-see history and games from the beginning. I'll be running one of his boot hills again at Gary Con this year, on the fabulous scenery that he had printed up and made.
The first time I saw Paul do that was actually at a Lake Geneva Gaming Convention. He got, and I don't know. Did you ever get to any of the Lake Geneva Gaming cons?
I did not. No.
Okay, all right. Then I won't put my foot in my mouth and say I think I saw you there. But he ran the Battle of Emerity Meadows using chainmail, and for those of you who might not be familiar with it, that is the fight that went down between the forces of good and the forces of evil that created the Moat House ruin and the ruined Temple of Elemental Evil you explore in T1 and T1 to 4. And he set the whole thing up as a chainmail fight using Grenadier minis, using terrain, and it starts off with a completely intact Moat House model that he built. And if the forces of good win and sack the place, by the end of it, it looks like it does in T1, and he's got the whole piece done as a ruin, like you would encounter it in T1 in 28 millimeter, and it is extraordinary. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece. So if you don't believe me, listen to Alan, because the Legends of Wargaming, Legends of Role Playing Room is amazing. And one of the coolest things I saw there. Did you see the analog computer that they had used for... I don't remember the war game. I don't know that it was a TSR game, but someone built an analog electrical computer for computing 2-hit rolls. It is the neatest thing. When I saw it from across the room, I was like, is that just like some silly prop from like Gamma World or Metamorphosis Alpha? And I went over and I talked to Kevin Maurice. Have you met Kevin?
Yeah, I have.
I went over and talked to Kevin Maurice, and he explained to me that although it wasn't in a working state right then, somebody at TSR or in one of the gaming groups then built so you flip a couple of switches and it dumps voltage into resistors, and then you turn a knob to a certain setting and it steps it up. There's a needle on the box that is demarked, and depending on what switches you flipped, and the switches are all marked, weather conditions, terrain conditions, morale, range. And once you've input all the values, the needle is pointing at what you need to roll.
And it reminded me of an Enigma for wargaming, So,
the Enigma machine. Hans, what do we need to roll to hit the Amerikaners? Click, click, click.
But it was a flashback to a time that I was there, and TSR briefly tried to do computer games, including in the TRS-80 Commodore era.
Yeah.
One of the games that they adapted was Fight in the Skies, Dawn Patrol, and the fellow Keith that we had as the programmer for that was so thorough that the center of mass of the plane shifted during your dogfight based on your fuel consumption, so that as fuel was expended, your center of mass actually shifted a little bit in a direction. Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly thorough. It was probably too good of a flight simulator, to be appreciated by the gaming fans who wanted to fly and shoot.
Right, exactly. The sim heads since the 90s call those yank and bank simulators. I want my biplane, my F-16, my F-15, and my SR-71 to all handle exactly the same. I push the joystick to the left, I turn to the left. I push to the right, I turn right. I pull up, I go up. I push down, I go down. That's it.
And in reality, when you're beginning, if you pull your joystick up, you stall, and if you push your nose down, you crash. So anyway, that was a lot of fun. I had some computer programming in my high school and college work days, so I didn't offer input other than to be impressed by what they were able to do. So
right on. Now, early Dragon magazine, for at least one issue, possibly two, had type-in programs. That was a big thing, kids. Back in the 70s and 80s, you'd buy a computer magazine or occasionally a copy of Dragon, and there would be code. There would be basic code that was generic enough that it would work across a wide range of home computers at the time. And you could just spend hours typing those numbers in. And God help you if the editors of the magazine didn't catch a typo that came.
Oh, that you had to, but of course, the result was going to be you spent hours typing it in and then hours finding your typo that you had put in, in it. So because that was inevitable. Well, I'm going to have to wrap it up. I've been with you a bit over an hour.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming by, Alan, and chit-chatting with us. You'll be back, though, right? We'll get you back on the show.
Of course. I'll be back, the next time you need good college football analysis.
We do need good college football analysis.
Right before a good, good convention like Gamehole Con in Madison in mid-October.
Yes. Now, I'm going to ask you one thing before you leave real quick. You kind of hinted at this last time, and I understand if this is still only in the hint phase. What gaming-related can we look for from Alan Hammack in the future? I know I'm excited about the concept, and I know the listeners are too.
Well, there's a gentleman that we mentioned earlier in the program named Paul Stormberg that probably is going to have some Alan Hammack related gaming material.
I can't wait. I can't wait. That's going to be so awesome. Alan, thank you so much for stopping by today. It is always a pleasure to see you, my friend. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
And I'll see you again real soon.
Very good, Bill. Thanks so much.
Take care, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And thank you, everyone, for stopping by today. I greatly appreciate it. It was a pleasure to have you all here. It was a pleasure to have Alan Hammack here. Thanks for all the great comments in the comment line. I'm just going to touch on a few of those real quick. Let's see. Go Gators, Landon. You're fired. Yes, Doug was a great guy by all accounts. Hello, Rob. And I'll take the bold step of saying hello from Alan. I have no recollection of that whatsoever. The combo of Gary's writing and Darlene's math absolutely captivated me when I read a friend's copy. So many AD&D products are literal work of art. I don't see as much of that in current RPG products. Well, Chris, I tend to agree with you. DMing is like playing jazz. It's a blend of existing structure with improvisation. Yeah. Or playing classic blues with rock interpretations. Thank you, 10 Bones, for the polite comments there. I'm glad you love this stream. Physical graffiti, favorite. Physical graffiti is the correct answer when somebody says, hey, what's the best Led Zeppelin album? It's Physical Graffiti. But if Physical Graffiti is one, it is tied for first by the rest of their catalog. So let me just say that. But it is the best of the best. It's like, so Physical Graffiti is 1, and Led Zeppelin 2 is 2, and Led Zeppelin 4 is 3. No. Physical Graffiti is 1. Led Zeppelin 4 is also 1. Led Zeppelin 2 is also 1. In Through the Outdoor is also 1. And just so on down the line. That's how I feel about Zeppelin. Those type-in programs taught me the basics of troubleshooting code. Same. And yes, it was a great stream. Thank you. Thank you, 10 Bones. Thank you for stopping by. You know, I can't say that I have great luminaries of the TSR era on every week and every episode. But I think I do a pretty bang-up job myself just talking about fun stuff. First among equals, yes. That is. Thank you, 10 Bones. That is the phrase I was looking for. Alan's work in TSR was amazing. Thank you for the great stream. Thank you, Rob, for listening. Thank you all for being here today. Let's see. Did I miss any of you fine folks over on Facebook? Because I'm an equal opportunity guy. Hello to Mick Leach. Hello to Robert Weber. I see you guys over there. Thank you for stopping by today. You know what I think the most awesome thing today was hearing about T1. Was that not just an earth-shaking thing for you guys, or was that just me? Have I just had my head in the sand? I mean, we finally got an answer right there. It's confirmed Loth was supposed to be in T1. There was supposed to be more of her later. It wasn't that she was wrongly put in there and there wasn't supposed to be any of her later. That just confirms what I believe is that Frank Mincer did an absolute hack job on T1 to 4. I like all the Bobs. I celebrate their entire catalog. Well, all right, guys. Listen, I'm starving. My stomach thinks my throat's been cut, so I'm going to go grab some lunch. Monday, we will be back with more great content. We are going to relaunch the Gods of Greyhawk set because I have my notes now on this PC, and we're going to go over a lot more relevant things about Gods of Greyhawk. Zoom back out to the 10,000 foot view and look at the hows and the whys before we jump into the gods themselves again. It may take the whole stream, or we may be able to move on to another couple of gods. But I think in light of what we're going to explore, talking about the individual gods will be a lot more interesting. So, Rob, that's T1 was my favorite part of T1 to 4. I think that's true of everybody. I think by the time your players are poking around on level 3, the module has just become a grind. It's just become a chore. From a DM standpoint, it was a chore for me. But anyway, yeah, I am going to call it there, guys. Thank you all for being here. It can't be underscored enough. Yes, 10 Bones, you're absolutely right. You guys keep hitting me with these great comments, and I'm like, but I want to go to lunch. But I am going to go ahead and call it a day there. Guys, thank you so much as always. I love you all, and I really appreciate your participation. I'm going to look real quick here. Let's see. Come on. Take a quick peek at the numbers. My channel, 790 subscribers. Guys, we are 10 subs away from 800, which starts us on the downhill run to the mini-con. Which, I should have mentioned that to Alan. So thank you all for making that happen. Thank you all for helping that happen. 790 subs. We were at 787 just like a day ago. So that's pretty damn awesome. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. Thank you to Bards of Greyhawk. Thank you to Alan.